everybody, it's Jenny, and today I'm sharing a project for the Not Too Shabby shop using this adorable Chameleon stamp set from Paperie ink. I'm also going to be using the Lawn Fawn Skinny Stripe Stencil, which you can find at nottoshabbyshop.com. Both products will be linked in the description box below, and when you stop in to shop, don't forget to use the coupon code N2S10 for 10% off your order. For my card today, I'm going to be doing some distress ink blending, so I'm going to bring in a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock and then trim that down to a couple different sizes, the first one being 3 inches by 6 inches, and the next two being 1 3/4 by 6 inches. And I picked these sizes because I'm going to be making a mini slimline card that measures 3.5 by 6 inches. So next I'm going to be doing some rainbow ink blending with Distress Oxides in the color Picked Raspberry, Squeezed Lemonade, Broken China, and Wilted Violet. So next you'll see that I take the second skinnier strip and do the same ink blending on that, which in hindsight I could have just left the cardstock a bit bigger and then trimmed it after the fact, but you know, I seem to figure these things out as I go. So once I've finished blending, I'm going to set that piece of cardstock aside, and I didn't want to waste all that ink, so I just added some water and then grabbed a scrap piece of cardstock and just laid it on top. And I'll use that for something in the future. Next, I use my distress sprayer to add some water to the cardstock and then pick that up with some paper towel. Next, I took another piece of the Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm going to be using that and the Lawn Fawn Skinny Stripe Stencil along with some black soot distress ink to create a black and white striped pattern. Next, I'm going to start playing around with my pieces and lay everything out to see how much I need to trim off of my ink blended pieces. And I'm just laying those on top of each other along with the 3 by 6 inch piece that's going to be my main panel. And I decided to cut each of these down to a 1/2 inch. So for my main panel piece, I'm going to bring in the same Distress Oxide colors as before and just smush those onto my craft mat. Add in some water and use a paintbrush to splatter another rainbow across the front. I added a little more yellow here because I thought it got a little lost and muddy when it mixed with the rest of the colors. And then after I added that to my panel, I pushed that back up into the rest of the ink so that I could lay down another piece of scrap on top and use that for later. So now that all my pieces are complete, it's time to add the chameleons, and I took that second piece of rainbow blended cardstock and I'm just going to play around with the chameleons because they're all facing different ways. So I'm kind of thinking how those are going to look when I lay them out on the front of the card and picking which orientation I think will work best. Once I've got that all figured out, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my Misty and use some VersaFine Clara Black ink to stamp out the images. I stamped these out a few times to make sure I got a really good impression, and then I decided to add some clear embossing powder just to make sure I didn't smear any of them when I fussy cut them out. I used my heat tool to melt the embossing powder and then proceeded to trim out each of the images. Next, I'm stamping out the sentiments with some Versamark ink onto some black cardstock, and I'm going to heat emboss that using some white detail embossing powder. Here I'm just using a microfiber cloth to remove any extra anti-static powder, and then I'm going to trim out my sentiments. Next, I added some foam tape to my sentiment strips and then started to assemble my card. And here's my finished card. I absolutely love how it turned out. It's super bright and colorful, and these little chameleons are just adorable. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!